It's always a fun moment when you walk up and you've got a drink in hand, and all of a sudden you're thinking, hey, it's going to be vaudeville night or something. Yes, I did. Hold on just a second. Is it a little heavy up front, sound-wise?
If you're Rocco, yes.
Oh yeah, with Rocco, that's really going to be heavy. Okay. Before we begin, Mikey has to fuck with somebody. What did the first one say? What did the first one say to the second one? I don't know. Yes. At some point, as much as Will has that great kind of like connection with the bus fares and everything else, he's been a little bit busy to show up. So motherfucker, make it to his show. Just saying. Welcome. I've already dropped at least one F-bomb. Mikey Taylor will be up here. I'm kind of like a precision strike F-bomb sort of guy. He's kind of like a B-52. And then there's Rocco, who's kind of like an alpha strike. So it's going to be, it will be an entertaining evening in one way, sense, or form. I would like to thank all of you who came out this evening. Welcome to the Slowdown. I'd like to thank the Slowdown as well for having us again. We have yet to destroy the venue or their reputation, but that's not for a lack of effort. I would like to ask one favor of everybody here, actually two. First of all, these people have been kind enough to have us here on multiple occasions, so drink. And as you drink, tip these people because they have been always cool to us, and I don't have a whole lot of pocket money, but I can at least try to encourage people to throw a little money their way. And I'm sure all of us have worked those wonderful service sector jobs where you're sitting there going, $3.25 an hour plus tips. Tips, dude, tips. Tips? Yeah.
Just the tip?
Yeah, something like anything. Although there is this kind of strange magic I have noticed with a certain crew of us. If you get any combination that involves myself, Shelby, and Marlo at a restaurant, for some reason we have this kind of, it's a karmic thing or an energy thing or something where the service goes straight to hell. We had a bad time at Spaghetti Works, we had a bad time at another restaurant, and then yesterday I ordered dinner at a pizza place. Everybody else got served, but me. Like, he's bringing the checks, I'm like, where are my slices? And he's like, what? Oh man, I'm sorry. So there's a kind of a strange sort of karmic thing. Having now point, what's that?
Don't forget Buffalo Wild Wings.
Oh God, yeah, that was the other one. So having said that, and now having suggested the possibility we may have bad service, sorry, just kind of pointing it out for future reference for anybody who's hanging out at a restaurant with us. We're sorry.
You can have that dynamic by buying me free drinks.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, where the hell was I? Oh, I would like to announce that we have another show next week. That one will be a benefit for KIOS FM. For those of you who are not NPR junkies, allow me to get a syringe and a needle for you. I highly recommend that station. They're a wonderful group of people. Michael Lyons has been more than kind to us in terms of helping to publicize the group. And so, come on down, throw a few dollars their way. It'll be at the pizza shop next week, Monday at 7. Okay, now that I'm done with the class announcements, such as it is, I had an odd moment last night. A number of us went to the Henry Rollins show. And should there ever be the possibility that Mr. Rollins might be tuning in, I'd like to apologize. I noticed something last night, and I feel both a little invigorated and a little bad about it. Because I was watching Henry on stage, as I have seen him on several different occasions, and I realized that I have kind of, well, good artists borrow and great artists steal. And I realized how much of my cadence I've kind of borrowed from him subconsciously, and how he kind of does that pistol-waving Weaver grip sort of thing, and kind of turns himself to the stage like this, knowing full well that that is a great way to make a smaller target of yourself for the people that will be throwing beer bottles at you. And I do that as well. And then he also kind of punctuates with this, and I realize that I do this shit all the time, and So, Mr. Rollins, thank you so very, very much for kind of being my role model. I will try to, in the process of stealing your stuff, not ruin your reputation as badly as I possibly could. And that's the other great irony, is that he sits around and he talks about his experiences in the music world and his experiences, dealing with these people or those people. And I've had a number of different experiences hanging out with odd, strange groups of people. But while he is Mr. Straight Edge, he referred to his body as being a Ferrari. I kind of treated mine during a whole period of time more like a Volkswagen Bug. Not one of the new ones either, one of those 60s jobs that you could sit there and throw anything into and the goddamn thing would run. And you kind of have certain accelerants to kind of put yourself along the way. And I kind of fell into that through a gentleman by the name of Rob. A number of you have heard the Berlin story. That will not happen this evening. Yay! A number of you have heard the Berlin story many, many times. Hey, look, Dave has no new material. What do you think is going to happen? Oh, I don't know. What do you think is going to happen is that he's going to open or finish with it. Greatest hits, whatever works. But I had this moment about 3 weeks ago as I was coming into my birthday. I am now officially 44. And another thing about the Rollins show last night is he was talking about the myth of the midlife crisis, and he pointed out that the average male's life expectancy is like 70, 72. So he's 51. He's heading into the down part of the roller coaster, headed toward the grave. I'm 44. I'm a couple of steps behind him. And so as I was joking around about my midlife crisis and the things associated with it, I kind of had to have that moment of reflection. And I thought to myself, my God, 44 years old, what was I doing 25 years ago? That would make me 19 and I was hanging out with Rob. Oh. And I should point out, my friend Rob was the sort of person who handled, shall we say, unique, interesting powdered contraband that came from places like Turkey and Thailand and other places, who had the greatest contacts for the sort of stuff that, as he put it, you could step on this shit 5 or 6 times and you could still sell it for an awful lot of money. And I was his bodyguard. It was a very strange, interesting, dynamic relationship to work with, because Rob was about, 8 years older than I was, and I was 19 years old, he was 27. He was a person who had just left the army. I was a person who had tried to join, and they said, how about no? But yet somehow I kind of weaseled my way in, or was invited in. The circumstances, as you will now see, get a little hazy, mostly because when you're not working, you're hanging out in a strange world, an entree, if you will, of the ability to use the fact that you hang out with people who have access to massive amounts of drugs. Gives you the chance to step into parts of the world that you would never find yourself in as a day job kind of person. I had the opportunity to, in passing, meet a gentleman by the name of Jean-Michel Basquiat. If you're familiar with the art world, you would know who that is. If you do not know who that is, when you leave here, not now, Google his name, and you will find a really interesting and amazing story about a great artist who sadly we lost very, very young. But then there were the other people that you kind of got to meet, because I was in the Chicago area at that point in time, and on my 19th birthday, I was hanging out, and Rob was like, okay, I'm gonna take you out in the town, we're gonna have a great time, I've got this friend of mine who wants to come along and hang out. He's a musician, he's gonna be handing out singles, all these clubs are a bunch of, okay, cool. And by that point in time, I was getting a little jaded on musicians. Chicago's always had kind of a good rock and roll scene, but the musicians that we saw were kind of like the guys from Survivor and Styx, when we'd be dropping off bits and pieces of powder to these people. And it was just these sort of people that you kind of had those horrible nightmares about in the music business. But he came along, and we met up at this first club, and I met this guy. His name is Al. And Al was like, I'm looking at this guy, I'm like, okay, he looks kind of interesting, kind of like black t-shirt, leather vest wearing, long hair, sunglasses, just did not look like the Survivor Styx kind of guy. And we would go and we'd go to a club and we would hang out, and the first thing that I noticed about Al At that point in time, I should point out, if you are hanging around and you are in the dope business, as it is, you will probably find yourself immersed in the dope life. You can't not be around it and not find yourself not doing it. There's a matter of curiosity. There's just a matter of it's fucking everywhere. You see all these people doing it. So eventually you find yourself with like, you know, a piece of tinfoil or a dollar bill or a syringe or something, and you start doing it. And by that point, I was not, as they say back then, chipping. I was kind of well on my way toward a full-blown Jones. And even by my standards, having hung around some very seasoned individuals in this world, Al's appetites were kind of epic. To give a good description, if you're going to be carving out a line of heroin, you kind of make it about 2 inches long and about 0.5 millimeter wide. Al's was about 3 inches long and looked like a fucking caterpillar. And I was like, ooh, that's hardcore. Okay, I'm not going to try that. But he's using his stuff. He's not sniping my shit, so he can do what he wants. It's all good. And so I'm kind of watching him do this, and I'm feeling like a lightweight, but I also realize that this is heroin. This is not sitting around doing shots. You do not fuck around with this stuff if you plan on, you know, having a long, happy, successful life. You know, I would recommend doing it for having a long, happy, successful life. For every Keith Richards, for every William Burroughs, for every person who does dope well, there are about 10,000 anonymous junkies who die and who go with that theory that they can be that person who does dope well. They are a very, very small minority, and I don't recommend you testing to find out if you're one of them. Just a thought. So we go hanging out, and we're going from club to club, and Al is handing out singles to like DJs everywhere. But by the time, you know, he's handed the singles out, and we've gone and we've hung out with these people, and we've done a little business, and we've done a little dope, and we've had a few drinks, and we go to another place, I'm still not hearing this single yet. And then we go to, and then Al drops off his last single, and he's like, I'm near my apartment. Can we just go back over there and hang out? You know, I'm going to grab some more singles. We'll hit a few more clubs. Okay, sure, sounds great. We get to Al's apartment, and I discover something very interesting, and that is Al has issues. Very deep issues. In a very interesting creative sense, his apartment was decorated in what I can refer to as early Victorian fucking nightmare. It had like steel sculpture along the wall that looked like the sort of thing that if you brushed up against it, you might lose a limb, either through it being sliced off or through catching some sort of horrible disease from the rust that had accumulated on there, or maybe somebody else had bled on it. And then there were pictures of, he had this collage art of milk carton kids interspersed with people who had like horrible, terrible war wounds. And I'm kind of sitting there checking this out going, this man has a very unique vision, now get me the fuck out of here. And Al, being a very kind, generous person, looks at me and he says, would you like a Bushmills? Well, I'm Irish, yes. I would also like air and pussy, what else? And so he said, okay, great. And he opens up a bottle of Bushmills and he hands it to me. I'm like, okay. And I'm turning around looking for a glass, and I turn around that he's grabbing a bottle for himself. And I went, oh, okay, so this must be mine. And I look, and he's got a cupboard filled full of bottles of Bushmills. I'm like, fucker, do you know the distributor? What's going on with this? As I said, the gentleman had appetites. And so I had 19 years old, being, you know, relatively new to this whole scene. I'm walking down the streets of Chicago, Illinois, carrying a bottle of Bushmills, not even bothering to put it in the traditional brown wrapper. I'm just walking down, drinking a bottle of Bushmills like this, and we're going from here to here, and we'd set our bottle, and we'd go into another club, and we'd hang out. And by this point in time Rob is like, audio's got to be somewhere else, so it's me and Al. And so we're walking down the street, and we're drinking, we're dropping off singles, we're hanging out, we're doing more dope, and we're meeting people, and we're drinking more, and we're doing more dope, and we're hanging around and talking to people, and dropping off singles, and doing this and that. So after, I don't know, we're heading well into like 3-something in the morning in Chicago, Illinois at this point in time. And Al's bottle is like 9/10 gone by this point. My bottle is about 1/4 gone at that point because it's whiskey for fuck's sake. And we're like walking down the street and there is a Chicago police car ahead of us. And that's when I discovered that Al has a slightly different version of danger than I do. Because Al suddenly, quite unexpectedly, grabs his bottle of Bushmills and goes, yo, pig, and throws the bottle, and it hits the back window of the cop car, and the bottle and the back window of the cop car explode! I would like to point something out, in case you missed it. I don't do a lot of cardio. I just, in case you missed it, I'm not a freak of nature. I don't run a whole lot. I lift weights, I do other forms of exercise, but I'm not a particular cardio guy. At that particular moment, I turned into a combination of Jim Fixx and Jesse Owens. Gone! Because at that point in time, I suddenly realized I am the guy wandering around with a few grams of dope, 3 unregistered pistols, a bottle of Bushmills, and an Al who just broke a cop car window. And I am gone, and Al is hauling ass after me. And it is one of those moments of extreme terror that is both amazingly energizing yet hysterically funny. You're kind of like laughing like Woody Woodpecker as you go down the street going, I can't believe you fucking did that, it's insane! And so we hang out and we finally make it to this next After Hours Club. And it kind of became the place where we were hanging out. It was like the last single that he had, and I finally got a chance to hear it. And this is around 1987. Acid house music was kind of happening at that point in time. It was kind of growing. So it was all very happy techno music going on at this point. And he hands the DJ the single. He's like, hey, come on, play it. It's, you know, I just haven't had a chance to hear it on the club floor yet. He's like, okay, do it, and we'll do that. So we're sitting there and, you know, now we're drinking beer, winding down, not having any more whiskey for the time being. And all of a sudden I hear these incredibly flanged hi-hats coming on, and Al grabs my shirt and says, this is my single, you gotta hear this. I'm like, okay, this is gonna be cool. Anybody with that kind of artistic vision and that particular sense of danger and that incredible like appetite for, you know, I hate to do a Guns N' Roses thing, but he does have an appetite for destruction, both real and self. I'm hearing the single, and first you hear these incredibly flanged hi-hats, and then these bass drum beats that are compressed to such a point that they sound like cannon shots. It's like boom, boom, bam, bam, boom, boom, bam, bam. And like it's a completely different beat than the dance floor is used to. And then there is this incredible scream, not the sort like a Roger Daltrey, yeah, you know. This is more like the scream where you kind of wonder, did he like knock somebody to the floor, stab him in the chest, and shove an SM-57 in his mouth? It sounded like somebody being murdered. And like the entire dance floor is like, the fuck is this? And then like this slamming guitar beat that's both really heavy but like really funky at the same time comes on. And I'm like, this is amazing. This is the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life. I mean, I'm a heavy metal punk rock kind of guy, but at that moment I fell deeply in love with industrial music. Because watching the shock and impact and awe of that dance floor as they got slammed by this incredible piece of music. And at first you see them like panicking, like they're gonna like run away and like just flee the dance floor, but they couldn't resist the power of this incredible like riff and groove. And all of a sudden the dance floor starts bopping and people are like dancing and they're moshing, and it's just like the most incredible thing I had seen to that point. And I'm like, wow, dude, if you got a spare one of those singles, I'll take it. It's like, yeah, we'll stop by, we'll grab one. Okay, cool. And so we leave that club. I'm taking Al back over to his apartment. And there's a strange thing if you are known to be hanging around people who carry large amounts of dope, that people assume that you too carry large amounts of dope. At this point in time, I had started with a large amount of dope, but I had been partying all night, so it was a much smaller amount of dope at that point. And so we're going over to Al's apartment, and this guy walks up, who apparently knows me from Rob, and says, hey, old man, got powder? I am wasted, I am tired, I am exhausted. I've had one of the greatest aesthetic moments of my life. I've had one of the most terrifying moments of my life when we wrecked the cop car. I'm a little energized out at this point. Excuse me. And I just looked at him like, man, done for the evening, got nothing for you, fuck off, I'm done. And he goes and opens up his jacket, and there's this like wicked looking knife in there. I should point out, I've had the rather strange circumstance of I have been shot once, I have been stabbed several times. Of these two circumstances, I prefer getting shot, thank you very much. I had stood about 5 feet away from somebody that got effectively disemboweled. Knives that scare the shit out of me. And they provoke a very interesting reaction. If you pull a knife on me, you will scare the shit out of me. And this is not going to be good for your health. If you like take a swing at me, I will armbar you and tell you to knock that shit off. If you pull a gun on me and I'm within arm's length, I will take it away from you. If you threaten me with a knife, you're gonna wake up in an intensive care ward. Just saying, in case the subject comes up. And so at that point, I'm sitting there and I see that knife, and I'm like, okay, so he obviously can see the pistol that I've got over here, my big 9mm Beretta at that point. But I'm hanging like this, so he can't see that I got my 380 over here. I had a 380 Beretta at that point. And so I kind of fake with this hand, and he goes with the knife, but then I come up and I've got a 380 pressed to his head. I'm like, look, told you, fuck off. Last chance. And he just starts backing up and going away, and his friends are leaving with him. And like, until they cross the street, I don't put the gun away. I put the gun away and I look at Al, and Al is looking at me with this incredible, like, the fuck? I'm like, what? And he said, I thought you were gonna kill that kid. I'm like, dude, if you moved another inch, I would have. Man, you're heavy. It is that strange moment when somebody that you have been watching doing the most extreme, crazy stuff turns around and looks at you and goes, man, you're heavy. So anyway, about, I don't know, 6 months later, it was 1988, I had the advanced single, but then I got the copy of the album. It was called The Land of Rape and Honey. Some of you may be familiar with that band, they're called Ministry. And I didn't add 2 + 2 together until much later to realize I had spent my 19th birthday hanging around with Al Jorgensen. I now would actually, given the opportunity, like to find Al, see if he has any vague recollection of that evening. And if he does, I'd be fucking impressed, because we were gone. And say, excuse me, just for the purposes of my resume, could I just put down Al Jorgensen says Dave Nesbitt is heavy? Because I'm pretty sure that would open some doors for me fairly quickly. And that is the strange, odd, and rather unique life that I had back in the day. I now have a much more strange, odd, and unique life, but it's far safer, far less drug-addled. I now go with like antidepressants and melatonin as opposed to heroin and cocaine. It seems to work out much better for me. And now I find myself in the circumstance of I take pictures with people and I shoot videos with friends of mine, and I find myself writing and doing all of these incredible things. And it is that moment when you realize that you were being somebody that you thought you could be back in the day, but you were not being yourself. And that somewhere around the age of 38, I got smart and went, oh, I'm a creative person, do this shit. It is way better for you, it is far, far better for you as a life. And along the way, I discovered that there are a host of other people who share in that particular desire with me, like Efemily and Marlo and Mikey Taylor and Rocco and a host of others, and this is how we came to form the Samurai. So thank you all very much for being a part of my strange, ongoing, life-giving rehab program, and I appreciate it. And so with that, having gone from one point to the other, Marlo Mates is here. She's using my iPad again. I kind of get to razz her about that from time to time. She has some brand new material she wants to try out for us. She was also at the Henry Rollins show last night, so she's probably every bit as energized as the rest of us. And I'm really looking forward to what she's got.
Well, I finally got some sleep today. I'm still recovering from one of the most chaotic and amazing weekends that I've ever had. I'm going through this phase right now where I'm apparently trying to be absolutely everything all at once. And the problem with that is that the schedules don't always match up the way they should. So in addition to my day job, lately I've accepted jobs as a makeup artist, a writer, a model, an advocate, activist, and acting in film, television, and live shows. And between Friday and Sunday night, I have worked all of these. So Shadow's Edge Haunted House opened on Friday, and as usual, I welcomed the haunting season from inside their insane asylum. I've loved working there ever since my first year when I was 15. I like to call it my screen therapy. There is nothing more therapeutic than getting in there, getting into character, and just being batshit insane at every single person that comes past you. The only downside to this job is that the other actors can get a little bit overzealous with the scenes. So occasionally when you get home, you have to play a game called, okay, which of these are makeup injuries, and which are actual injuries, which I've gotten a lot better at recently. Now, I'm also part of a television and live show called Creature Feature, and we did a promotional event on Saturday, so I had the amazing opportunity to hang out with, film with, and drink with Kyra Schoen and George Casada from Night of the Living Dead. Later that night, we had a calendar girl contest at Haunted Hollow, which was amazing. And from there, I quickly had to jet to a friend's benefit show at Door 19, as I'd been responsible for collecting the prizes and auction items from the sponsors. And I was there until around 11, when I had to jet off to Howlin' Hound's coffee shop, where we were filming a music video. I was in charge of effects makeup and had some camera time. And for some reason, they trusted me with unlimited access to coffee, soda, and 5-hour energy drinks. Those of you who've been to Howlin' Hounds before know that it's conveniently located directly in front of the prison. It got to the point where I was afraid to go outside because I was convinced they would mistake me for a junkie.
It's all right, I know a guy.
All right, hook me up later. So I learned more that night about technology and film equipment than I'd even known existed prior to it. My portion of the video ended around 6 o'clock in the morning, and I went back home. So by Sunday morning, I had consumed so many energy shots and cups of coffee that I could barely keep my legs under me, but I wasn't done yet. Saturday around noon, I forced myself out of bed and got ready to meet the Samurai, to go to Lincoln to see Henry Rollins perform. Now, we spent most of the day browsing buildings, and because it's us, browsing bars. And we were just killing time before the show started. But his set was absolutely mind-blowing. I'd never seen anything like that before. And he sparks quite a bit of thoughts. For those of you who aren't aware, I also co-own a daycare, and there's generally not a lot of money in childcare, just as stereotypically there's not a lot of money in teaching. That's one of the elements that for me makes these jobs paradoxically the most rewarding and frustrating that I've ever had. As a sidebar, at 17 years old I got my first grown-up job. I was a speech and drama teacher at Mercy High School, so I do have the real teaching experience too. And I've encountered several people that almost look down on me for being a teacher and for being involved in childcare because financially it's not really as stable as I would like. So tonight I would like to read you 2 pieces from one of my favorite slam poets / high school English teacher / rugged sex symbols, Taylor Mawley. So this is called What Teachers Make by Taylor Mawley. He says the problem with teachers is, what's a kid going to learn from someone who decided that his best option in life was to become a teacher? And he reminds the other dinner guests that it's true what they say about teachers. Those who can, do, and those who can't, teach. I decide to bite my tongue instead of his, and resist the temptation to remind the dinner guests that it's also true what they say about lawyers. Because we're eating after all, and this is polite conversation. I mean, you're a teacher, be honest, what do you make? And I really wish he hadn't done that, and I'll tell you why. Because, you see, I have this policy about honesty and ass-kicking, and that is that if you ask me for it, then I have to give it to you. So you want to know what I make? I make kids work harder than they ever thought they could. I can make a C+ feel like a Congressional Medal of Honor, and an A- feel like a slap in the face. How dare you waste my time with anything less than your very best? I make kids sit through 40 minutes of study hall in absolute silence. No, you may not work in groups. No, you may not ask a question. Why would I let you go to the bathroom? Because you're bored. And you don't really have to go to the bathroom, do you? I make parents tremble in fear when I call home around dinner time. Hi, I hope I haven't called you at a bad time. I just wanted to talk to you about something your son said in class today. To the biggest bully in the grade, he said, "Leave that kid alone." I still cry sometimes, don't you? It's no big deal. And that was the single noblest act of courage that I have ever seen. I make parents see their children for who they are and for what they can be. You want to know what I make? I make kids wonder. I make them question. I make them criticize. I make them apologize and mean it. I make them write and read. I make them spell definitely beautiful, definitely beautiful, definitely beautiful, over and over and over until they will never misspell either of those words ever again. I make them show all of their work in math and hide it on their final draft in English class. I make my kids understand that if you've got this, then you follow this. And if anyone tries to judge you by the amount of money that you make, then you give them this. So listen to me carefully, and you will know that what I say is true. Teachers make a goddamn difference. Now what about you? And this is another favorite of mine. This is called the impotence of proofreading. Has this ever happened to you? You work very hard on a paper for English class, and then get a very low grade, like a D, or even a D equals. All because you are the world's worst liverwurst spoiler. Proofreading your peppers is a matter of the utmost impotence. Now this is a problem that affects manly students. I myself was such a bed spiller once upon a term that my English teacher in my sophomoric year, Mrs. Smith, said that I would probably never get into a good colleague. And that was all that I really wanted, was just to get into a good colleague. And not just anal community colleague. Because I wouldn't be happy at just anal community colleague. I needed a place that would offer me intellectual stimulation. I needed to be challenged menstrually. Now, I know that this makes me sound like a stereo, but I really wanted to go to an ivory legal colleague. So I needed to improvement. Or gone would be my dream of going to Harvard, jail, or prison. So I got myself a spell checker, and I figured that I was on Sleazy Street. But there are several mistakes that a spell checker can't catch. For instance, if you accidentally leave out word, your spell checker won't put it in you. And God, for billing purposes only, should you have serial problems with Tory spelling, your spell checker might replace a word with one that you had absolutely no intention of using. Because let's be honest, what do you want it to do? It only does what you tell it to do. I mean, you're the one sitting there with your hand on the mouth going, clit, clit, clit. It just goes to show you how embargo one careless little clit of the mouth can be. Which reminds me of this one time during my junior mint. My teacher read my entire paper on A Sale of Two Titties out loud to all of my assmates. No, I am not joking, I'm totally serial. That was the most humidifying experience of my life, being laughed at like that pudically. So do yourself a flavor and follow these two Pisces of advice. 1, there is no prostitute for careful editing. And 3, when it comes to proofreading, the red penis, your friend. Thank you. I'm trying not to.
We're going slamming. This morning when I slam dance on stage again. And so we come to, one second. Hi, Will, are you watching? Because you are the kind of guy who watches, we know this. I just wanted to say, we're here and you're there and you could be here. I'm just saying, we got shows coming up, dude. Give us a call.
Yes, you will.
Come find us, please. And so we come to that part of the evening. She has business cards with her phone number. Well, she's not cruising for a date, I think. But she is a family, and she is definitely the sort of person who definitely leads us into a different kind of mindset, which is one of the reasons I've always appreciated having her come up here and impart her madness upon us. Ladies and gentlemen, the family.
one do I start with? Oh my goodness.
Just one in each hand.
Yeah, it's all double fisted up here. Oh, yeah. Exactly. We'll get to that. We will totally get to that. So I banged the internet and you watched. I totally did. So it's October, barely, and my baby sister turns 30 this Thursday. Now we're 5 years apart. That lets you know what my birthday is going to be this year. So I thought I would get up here and talk a little bit about family because, well, my experiences have been a little bit atypical, especially for the Midwest. So I put together a few things I wanted to bring up. Let's see here. Yeah, dirty laundry time. Oh, yeah. Well, my sister Lindsay, she and I are both adopted, both born in October. And she looks like my family. I don't. She is very fair. She is very small as far as body type and that sort of thing, and nowhere near as loud as I am. So I had to have been the milkman's adopted child. So let's see here. Where do we want to start? Yeah, she is the one that can blend in at the family reunion. I don't. And in some ways, I have always been a little bit jealous of her in that regard, because she has always had what seems on the outside to be a better relationship with my family. And I have been one of very few who have been as outspoken and as different and as devil-may-care that I have ever met. And unfortunately, we have had other relatives who were more like that, but unfortunately the great wheel apparently has decided that I was not to meet them before they passed. But at her wedding in 2008, I believe the actual date was 8/8 of 08, and I said, that's disgustingly adorable, stop that. I gave a speech about how she and I growing up were never really close, being 5 years apart, because when I became a teenager and realized that I knew everything in the world, she was still in that very young, I'm going to look up to you because you're my big sister sort of mental space. And then when I grew out of being a teenager and realized that I didn't know shit, she was just getting into her teenage years and knew it all. And now that we have both kind of grown up and we're in our 30s and we realize neither one of us know a goddamn thing, we have this opportunity to actually be pretty close. And she had her first child a little over a year ago, and it's been interesting watching her become a mother and me become more of a child in a way. But I was talking to her the other day, and I asked her, I said, so what do you want for your birthday? I have no idea what to get you. Do you want, Babies R Us stuff? What do you want? And they have been building this house quite literally from the ground up. They bought the property, and then I don't know why they didn't just take a bulldozer to the house, because all they had was sticks. I think all they had was a foundation, and they have put everything else on top of it over the last 2.5 years. And I said, so what do you want? And there's silence on the other end of the phone, and she says to me, we could really use a toilet. Yeah. And I'm really thinking, now wait a minute. You're ruining my fun. I wanted to be the weirdo to get you something like that. You're not supposed to ask for it. So I'm debating on whether or not I should if I should get her something normal just to counteract that. But
bidet.
Yes, I should totally get her a bidet, and I will say from love from Jess and Alan. So I will do that for you, Alan. There you go, a fuzzy toilet seat.
As long as I don't have to pay for it.
There you go.
Whatever you want.
All right, we'll have it engraved. However, my childhood was interesting. Anybody here native Omaha? Anybody here ever heard of Sophomores Paints? Yeah. That's my family. I was. Yeah. I'll tell you, when I moved into the house that I bought in 2004, there were still a few cans of Sophomores Paint in the garage, and I'm going, fuck you for not giving us a discount on the house. We stuck it to you anyway. So that was my slim satisfaction right there. But I was that brat, that My God, man. Good night.
There's a lot of dust in my house.
Okay.
Put your brain back in your head.
But when I was a young child, and I would do the things that normal children had asked for, I'd say, I want a pony. I got one. I was that brat. So we have some interesting stories that sound very snobbish, but when you boil them down, they're just as hilarious as any story involving a wine cooler. So one of my favorites, when I was younger, about 11 I think I was, we took a family trip to visit relatives to Denmark. And we were sitting in the hotel room this evening, and my dad is getting ready, and I don't think any of us were looking at him. Now, my dad, I love him to death, but he's very, very soft-spoken. He's very much of Mr. Maybe, and not antisocial, but if he doesn't have to go out, he's happier for it. And he's sitting there getting ready on the edge of the bed. I don't know what I was doing, pulling on my skirt or messing up my hair or something like that. But I hear him say, ow. And we all turn around to look at him, and he's going like this. No, I take it back. He's going like this. This is slightly important. And we're looking at him going, what did you do? He says, I think I broke my finger. How? I was pulling up my sock. So those of you who know me and have any understanding of exactly how I can legitimately walk into a door frame because too much is going on up here, you know where I get it. I get it from my dad. So next thing I know, we're in this Danish hospital, and he's pulled a tendon. He now has a dropped finger from a pulled tendon in his middle finger, pulling up his sock. Yes. And it got to be quite hysterical later, because that became his impatience meter. And the faster he would tap that on something, the worse it became. And it also alerted us to when he really had to pee. So as we were disembarking from the ferry across the North Sea, I believe it was, that fucker was going nonstop. Just, okay, we get it. You're surrounded by an ocean. We'll find you a porta potty somewhere. We want the deposit back on the rental. My mother also had this wonderful, wonderful habit of when she wanted something when we were on vacation, she would order a bottle of wine and wait till Dad had a few. And then she would ask, honey, can I have the mink? Or whatever it was that she wanted. And amazingly, I think that's how they filled their house with antiques. But we were in Mexico, I don't remember where, but there were no donkey shows because the children were along. And my dad had a few. And he is left-handed, which is why the right-handed middle finger was kind of funny. But he's sitting there, we're in Mexico, we can see the ocean from our hotel room, and the man orders a steak. A steak. Dad, you're from Omaha, Nebraska. Omaha steaks. Get a goddamn piece of fish, will ya? As he's sitting there, cutting this steak, friction and leverage worked against him. Somewhere mid-saw, this steak became airborne. And it shot down this table. It's a large table, for the four of us, and we've got plenty of elbow room. And this particular steak just... I don't know how he had the drunken reflexes to do this, but he did. He sees this thing mid-air, takes his right hand, which is not his dominant hand, and goes... catches it before it hits the ground, right here. Plops it back on his plate, gets the knife back, and continues sawing without ever breaking his stream of thought. How? I want to know if he gives lessons. So, I have seen my father do some very interesting things. I have seen my entire family. The joke is that my mother is a 5'2" Jewish dynamo that would make even Ernie Chambers cross the street to avoid him if she were walking down the street. And I'd like to think that I have somehow gotten the middle between the two of them. That would make me happy. But let's see, what else do I have here? Oh, yes. Growing up, we got this rickety little duplex in a town called Vale. It was just horrible. Sarcasm is ripe with this. This was like the hipster's Aspen in the 80s. This was where the undiscovered powder was. And I'm not talking Dave's kind of powder.
I was about to ask.
I'm talking about I ski through it. You might have done that anyway, but this is the winter powder. And that is where I learned to ski. And again, with my dad. Apparently I'm a daddy's girl. Oh, the things you learn when you use this instead of therapy. But no. That's always creeped me out, just throwing that out there. So, and yet I like pigtails. That just doesn't compute. But there was a day I remember skiing with my dad, because normally I would go through lessons, because apparently I just didn't want to free ski. I would want somebody to say, okay, so these moguls are up above your knees. Ski them. Well, okay then, sign me up for knee replacement now, would you? But I was free skiing with my dad one day, and my feet were freezing. I mean, they were, if I had taken my socks off, my feet probably would have been blue. They were so cold, and I was whining to my dad. I said, Dad, I'm about this big, whining, Dad, my feet are cold. And so we had to stop every couple of hours. I'd take off my boots, and they'd be sopping wet, and apparently I've always been heavy, so I sweat, something like that. And so we would dry my socks and my boots on these industrial-sized dryers. That's their entire purpose in life. If there was not a boot on the end of this thing, you probably could have dried a Shih Tzu in about 15 seconds because they are that powerful. And we had to do this every couple hours. And finally, at the end of the day, when I could take it no more, we actually had to ski down the mountain an hour or so early. And he marched me into the ski shop saying, what is wrong with this kid? Why are her feet so sore? And they took my boots apart, and they measured it up, and they measured my feet, and they said, Mr. Sober, it's not your kid. Her boots are 2.5 sizes too small. I left the store with some brand new ski boots and an apology that day because my dad felt so terrible. I just wanted to ski, to be honest. But our road trips out there were always fun until my dad got to pick the music. And I don't know how many of you do read the blog or if I've ever told you about how my father, being about a 5'8", very skinny, ethnically looking Jewish man, scared off some hitchhikers in the 80s. Now, the 80s were kind of, they were a devil-may-care kind of era, and people didn't necessarily scare easily like they do now when you think of hitchhiking, but we were headed into town from getting ready for dinner, and so it was just the four of us, Mom, Dad, my sister, and myself. And there were a couple of hitchhikers that were heading, I don't know where they were going exactly, but they had their skis with them, their boots. And if you've ever tried to walk in ski boots, it's nigh on impossible. It's actually easier to get somewhere walking backwards because these boots they're bent forward. So you feel like you're, I don't know, walking on the moon or something. You can't stand up straight. And we are in our big black Suburban, and we're all dressed nicely, going to dinner, and we pull up to these husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, something like that. We never did find out. Hitchhikers. And we get stopped. They put their skis down. They're getting ready to get in, and I don't remember who it was that opened the door, but as soon as the door was open and they could hear what was coming out of the stereo, they just kind of backed up and had this very frightened look on their face. And I wanted to play for you exactly what it was they heard, but unfortunately, my tablet is apparently being stupid. Give me a second here. There we go. This would be what they managed to hear. My father managed to scare away 2 innocent hitchhikers with German yodeling music, which he had on cassette. on loop for the entire goddamn drive. From here to Colorado, which is, depending on how you drive, anywhere from 4 to 8 hours. And I'm talking from the way I drive to the way my dad drives. Guess which end of the spectrum I'm on. So yeah, that would be my goofy father, Mr. I broke a finger pulling up my socks, Mr. catch a steak midair, never losing a train of thought, managed to frighten away 2 innocent hitchhikers with some yodeling. And this is why I should probably be in therapy today. Instead, I am up here entertaining you people with dirty laundry from the Sophomores Empire. So, thank you very much.
And with that, if for no other reason to allow the yodeling to dissipate in your head, we'll take 15 minutes. We'll call it an intermission. When we return, we will have an audition. Hi, Liz. And then Liz will be followed by Rocco. And then Rocco will be followed by Mikey.
Oh, dear God, help us all.
And then after that, I don't know, maybe we'll just take some random audience member and say, talk! But anyway, 15 minutes, stick around, we'll have a great time.